Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure, Brian. Pleasure to be here. My name is Paul Lesser. I live in Westchester County, New York, 25 miles north of Midtown Manhattan, with my wife, two teenage daughters, and our dog. Have a wonderful family life here. I got my start in sales. My dad was a jewelry retailer, and I grew up working in the jewelry store in Williamsburg, Brooklyn as a young teen. Worked in the store all the way up through graduating college when I decided at that time that I really did not want a life of a retailer, and had a fraternity brother who was working for AT&T selling phone systems, and I asked him if he can help me get a job at AT&T, and there I was 3 weeks after graduating college, selling phone systems or working for AT&T.
Well, that jewelry business, I mean, because jewelry is highly negotiable, right?
Yeah, jewelry is highly negotiable. I started really as a 13-year-old. It was more just watching and gift wrapping and working the register. But that experience working in the jewelry store, watching that face-to-face interaction and negotiation was invaluable and part of my DNA.
Well, that's it, because if you don't have that type of experience, you don't really understand how the world works.
Yeah, I agree. It's also very interesting because the customers come to you.
Yeah,
They
it's different.
walk they walk into the store and they have a need immediately upon walking into the store, and the the negotiation is face to face. Where what I do today in corporate sales, it's a lot of prospecting and a lot of defining the need, and it's not a lot of face to face, especially at the beginning of the sales process.
Yeah. And, but both are pretty still emotional decisions. I think jewelry is much more of an emotional decision.
Yeah, I agree, but they are similar in the fact that there's still a want, there's still a need, there's still a gap, there's still a quote unquote problem to be solved. So that's why, in a lot of sense, I go back to my heritage of working in the jewelry store when I'm out there negotiating, seven-figure deals.
Yeah, I think it's a great training. I sold shoes in high school, and it was good because it wasn't just ladies' shoes and it wasn't just men's shoes. It was both. And it's great experience. Because some people want to negotiate the price. And, shoes is not as negotiable as jewelry.
Yeah, that is that is very true. I mean, I remember as I got older in the jewelry business, and I was actually doing some selling, having to call my dad over and say, "Hey, Dad, is actually I called him Ronnie in the store. Never call him Dad in the
Yeah,
store,
yeah. Smart,
and
smart.
yeah, and we would make decisions and we would negotiate together. It was a lot of fun, precious father-son moments as well.
That is cool. And what did you like about B2B sales?
So, what I really liked about B2B sales, first and foremost, was the fact that I really made the decision that I wanted to spend time with my children, and I wanted to be at their ball games, and I wanted to be at their concerts. And my father wasn't, because he was working
Yeah,
crazy hours in retail.
retail sucks,
So
right?
I really enjoyed the hours of B2B, and I also enjoyed when I started my career with AT&T, the whole um, cold calling methodology and that initial sales training that I got at AT&T as a 21-year-old out of college.
And did you have any call reluctance?
Yeah, I think even to this day, honestly, there's a
You're
little
human.
call reluctance. Exactly, exactly. But I think I learned very, very quickly not to take it personally. My first day at AT&T, they put about 12 of us in a little horseshoe, and they gave us a phone and a headset and a list of people to call. And I was prospecting literally 8 hours a day for the field sales team, generating leads for them. And it was a wonderful experience. You dealt with a lot of rejection, but as a young salesman, uncovering a lead and having to engage with the AE who was in the field selling and say, "Hey, I got a lead for you." Um, that part of it to me was really exciting.
Yeah. So it was a team sale.
It was a team sale. A lot of times the field salesperson would take the cold caller, so to speak, myself, out into the field on particular opportunities that I had uncovered myself. So it was a great way of learning. And then the other part that I really enjoyed was AT&T flew us out to Cincinnati. I spent about 9 weeks in Cincinnati doing some really structured sales training, and some of that training I still use today.
And have you covered other geographies other than New York Metro?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I really during my career have not been focused on geography. I also have not been really focused on vertical markets. I work for a company today, Nectar Services Corp. We're about 100 people. And if you uncover an opportunity, regardless of where it is, as long as another sales rep is not attached to it in CRM, it's your opportunity to work.
Wow. So kind of an open territory.
It's an open territory. I think you need to be focused and still put a plan together and still, have those 10 or 15 accounts and put a prospecting plan in place. But yes, in essence, as long as it's not in CRM, I could go ahead and see if I can create an opportunity for myself.
And when did you make the transition into enterprise sales from kind of that inside setting appointments to outside closing big deals?
Yeah, so I graduated from the prospecting, and I became an outside sales rep for AT&T. And the way that AT&T was structured at the time was, you sold any organization within a certain territory. At that time, I did have a territory between 0 and 40 phones. If somebody had 41 phones, it went to the person who sold between 41 and 80. And if you 81, you sold. So you get my point, right?
Big company
And
joy. Yeah.
big company joy. But what I did learn from that experience is I enjoyed the bigger sales, not necessarily because they were bigger commissions, they were just more complex.
Yeah.
And there were more people involved in them. It took more thought and preparation, and I really enjoyed that.
And where does that come from, given that you started in retail, which was transactional? They probably, if they left the store that day, they probably didn't buy.
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah. To enterprise where they don't buy on the first visit.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because a part of me is very patient and a part of me is not very patient. Clearly, in my business life, I need to be much more patient. I've done a lot of reading on the art of sales and the art of complex selling, and I just really fell in love with it. I just really enjoyed the challenge. And that's why for me right now, the bigger, the better. I love those seven-figure deals. And listen, I've also worked through a place where a lot of it used to be CapEx perpetual, and now we're in an OpEx subscription world. So that's been a learning experience as well.
Yeah. And do you focus solely or exclusively on seven-figure or larger
No,
deals?
no, I mean, I sell into the Fortune 500 space. I would say that my average deal is probably around 400,000 in total contract
Wow.
value over a 3-year term selling software. I've sold some seven-figure deals. Those are 12 to 18 months sales cycles. So if you use a baseball analogy, you definitely need some singles and doubles in there, because if those 12 to 18-month deals don't close, you still need to have enough in the top of your funnel to make your number.
And as far as like the passion for that, where does that come from? Are you a chess player? Do you just like to think ahead, or do because there are strategic people that, but most people are circadian every day. You get up, you work, you eat, you sleep.
Yeah, I would say that I'm an average chess player. I think it comes from my competitiveness,
Okay.
which started from my days of being an athlete. I enjoy beating the competition. I have a ton of respect for my competitors, and a lot of my competitors are very viable and have solid solutions. I think it comes from that. I think it also comes from being able to sell my unique value. And I think most importantly for me, coming from a world where I used to sell features and solutions, now I'm selling outcomes. And when your mind flips from a solution feature sale to selling an outcome, I just enjoy that. I just have
Yeah.
passion for that. And just another piece of the puzzle, Brian, is you get to know your prospects who might soon become your customers. And I care about them. I want them to be successful. And if they can be successful and I can help them be successful, to me, it's a win-win.
And was this an epiphany that you had along your career, or was it always this way? Because a lot of reps, once they do a big deal, then they fall in love with it. They get
Mm,
that confidence that they figure it
mm.
out. But until then, they're like, I'll take the medium and small deals.
I wouldn't say it was an epiphany for me. I think for me, it was the more complex sales being more challenging, taking more brain power.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy doing the discovery process and asking those open-ended questions and potentially even finding problems during discovery that a customer or a prospect didn't even know that they had. I think it's the complexity of it. And another piece to it, Brian, is, I also consider my sales career a hobby as much as I consider it to be my career. So to use that chess analogy, chess might be a hobby, fishing might be a hobby. Not that I don't have hobbies, but I really view it as a hobby, and it's a wonderful thing. It served me quite well.
Would you characterize it as a passion also?
Definitely a passion
Yeah.
as well. And listen, at the end of the day, you want to help your customer. You want them
Yeah.
to, reach their outcomes. You want to fill those gaps. When you get that commission check and it's a nice number, it's wonderful. That's a wonderful thing as well. And the larger the deals, usually the larger the commission checks.
Yeah. So being money motivated helped along the process.
I think money motivated help, but I'm not solely money motivated. I think when you help your clients achieve a goal or achieve an outcome, the commission is a byproduct of that.
And who do you typically, or who do you feel most comfortable talking to? Is it executive? Is it user? Is it on the economic side or the technical side?
So I've done a lot of studying and I've had a lot of conversations with procurement, and I thoroughly enjoy the procurement conversation, which usually comes at the end of the sales cycle. I enjoy the conversation. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, Brian, because if there are 12 to 15 people in the business, the users who are sold on your product and they want your product and you've done a good enough job of justifying it to them, negotiating with procurement becomes easier because the business is putting pressure on procurement saying, hey, let's get this done. We want this solution. So I find those negotiations to be really intriguing. And I enjoy the discovery process as well. And one of the things that I learned early on in my career is just because somebody doesn't have an impressive title, just because somebody might be lower on an org chart than others doesn't mean that they're incredibly influential on the decision. Same for somebody who might have a VP title. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're
Power.
respected within the organization and have
Right.
power. So I enjoy that whole power shift and understanding who has influence and power within an organization.
And have you developed a sense for that?
I think so. I don't take it for granted. I try to find, and I think it's incumbent to find a champion within your account. I would say just about every, if not every, large deal that I've sold, I had a champion who would give me some inside information regarding who I should be communicating with, making some introductions, letting me know who people are, um, talking to me about the buying process and how the technical decisions get made as well. So I think it's incumbent to have a champion within the account that's going to help drive your message internally as well.
And what I've found with large complex sales is you have to have what I call a good BS meter, because your time is all you have. And you can only work on so many deals within that window of time. So you have to be able to judge both the people and the deal.
What's the saying? The saying is win slow, lose fast. You need to know quickly. One of the determining factors for me is if I'm working with a prospect and I'm doing a discovery, for example, and let's say there's 4 people on the discovery call and we move on to the next phase, which might be a live demonstration specific to what you learned during the discovery, the pain points and the gaps. If those people are not introducing you to other people within the organization as time goes on, and if 4 people don't become 8, don't become 12 quickly, and if you're also not communicating with other lines of business besides the line of business that you were originally introduced to, it's probably time to have some tough conversations and potentially cut cord and find another.
Yeah. Because a lot of times they want you to go steady with them, meaning don't go rooting around the company. They'll get it done.
That's true. A lot of times they want you, yes, a lot of times they want you to go steady with them. A lot of times they're using you, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Business is business. They're using you to get a lower price
Someone else. Yeah.
from someone else that they really want to buy from. Sometimes they want to learn about feature functionality that you have that maybe they can go back to the company they want to buy from and say, hey, you need to develop this for me if we're going to do further business together.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to root that out quickly.
And what is the most challenging part of these deals?
Wow. I think the most challenging part of the deals is just understanding exactly where you are in the deal. And that's where I lean on colleagues, mentors, leadership within my organization, where we can actually sit down and lay out the org chart, where I am in the sales process, who I've spoken to, and maybe come to a collaborative decision on where we are. I think that's the most difficult thing for me. Sometimes you get off a very positive demonstration where you've nailed it, but perhaps you didn't, and you don't know.
Right.
So, and and that's where, by the way, that champion within the organization comes in, because that person, if you find that person, will give you honest feedback.
Right. Yeah. Because I always, when you could do a face-to-face call, that walk out to the parking lot was.
I love that. Is such a great point. That is such.
I could almost tell if they were going to buy if the champion walked out to the parking lot with me, if they just waved goodbye at the reception desk.
Yeah, and you know something. Another is when you leave the conference room, if on the way out, they're introducing you to people in cubicles as you're walking towards the door.
Yeah.
That's another huge, yeah, I agree. I agree. So, some of it's interesting. Some of it is certainly sales, right? Some of it is, but some of it is the personality of it, um, and just the shape and form that the sale takes, and those subtle things, an introduction, a handshake, eye to eye contact, you see somebody taking notes. Those are very important indicators.
Yeah. And people tend to ignore those, but you're like, I'm always looking for an asset test, something to determine, is this a deal or is it a B deal or is it a phony deal? Or you just call them fodder?
So let me learn from you a bit. What are some of those acid tests that you would
Oh,
look
yeah,
for?
a lot of them. Are they asking for a next step versus you have to suggest a next step?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Are they raising your weakest point and your competitor's strongest point?
exactly.
Are they buying into your strongest point?
Yeah. I think your point about asking for next steps and um, just getting a feel for if you have to ask for next steps, what's their
Yeah, or they just
reaction?
refuse.
Right,
Yeah, they
right,
say, "Oh, we'll get back to you," or
right.
whatever.
Yeah, and I also find, interestingly enough, in my sale, listen, and I'm very cognizant of my company's money and resources, and um, pre-COVID, I'm very cognizant about travel and travel expenses and hotels, but there is a point in time where it does make sense to have a meal together
Well,
and learn
yeah,
about people and learn about their families and have that sort of talk about the kids and talk about the dog and talk about potentially the house they're building. And I find that if you don't have that conversation during a complex sale, your chance of closing the deal is diminished. And again, it's being respectful of your company's resources, but there is a time and a place for it.
if as often as you can, because and that the other asset test is, do they want to talk with you?
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. But I've also learned this, Brian, that I can have the greatest solution. I can have the greatest marketing message. I can have tremendous rapport with somebody. If they don't have problems that I can fix, if there's not a point A and a point B, and if I can't help them get from point A to point B, doesn't matter how many dinners we have.
It doesn't. And there are false champions, the people
Agreed.
who want to hear about the kids and want to talk about their house, but love a nice steak dinner, but can't get anything done.
I think you know when it's real.
Yeah, right. Much like in that jewelry store when the guy's balking at the engagement ring, the
Yeah,
fiance kind of knows what's going on.
right. And here's an example back to the jewelry store. If the person really wants to learn about diamonds and really wants to learn about the quality of the diamond, the size of the diamond, the way that it's cut, your chances of closing the deal are a lot better if somebody's just coming in and they're picking up rings and looking at them and asking
Right.
how much the price is.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Kind of that transfer of ownership where they're visualizing the outcome
absolutely.
and they're kind of
Absolutely.
pulling you into it and help me out, teach me the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another piece of it also is back to something you'd said before is that, I'm really a people person. I love meeting people, talking to people. And, in the jewelry store, it was more one-on-one, two-on-one. In this complex sale that I'm in, you're meeting 14, 15, sometimes upwards of 20 people. And if you have something of value, you get to know them, and that's a lot of fun. And listen, I've had a lot of opportunities that did not turn into closed business, but there are people that I still keep in touch with and I learn from, and I've created some relationships there. So there is something to be gained, even if the deal isn't closed, although, of course, that is the ultimate objective.
And what would you say is your weakness that you wish you could really get better at?
Wow. Um, I am not the most patient. And in these long sales cycles, you really need to be patient. I've learned in my corporate world that there's a process that you need to stick to the process. For example, finish the discovery before you start providing a live demonstration. Don't all of a sudden during a discovery find out that you can fill a need and stop doing the discovery and go into a demo. So I've had to teach myself to be much more patient, and I think I am, because I have to. It's the only way to close these kinds of deals.
And have you found a particular way of doing that?
I think it's following a process.
Yeah.
And that's really the way that I've done it, is if you don't skip steps in the process, and you understand that not only is there a technical sale to be won, a lot of customers don't know how to transact business within their own
They
organizations.
don't.
So sometimes you have to walk them through how they can go about getting the deal closed. And then there's also the technical sale. So you have to win a couple of small sales in order to win the larger sale. And that takes time and patience.
And that's it. And I try and convey this because larger deals are just one big trap after another. And they're so easy to fall into. It's like
I
whoever's buying that jewelry versus whoever's getting that jewelry.
I agree.
Right. Because the person who's getting the jewelry is very excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The person paying for the
Absolutely.
jewelry is a little cautious.
It's actually best when the person who's buying the jewelry is there with the person who it's being bought for. That's that's an indicator that you have a good chance of closing the deal.
Yeah. And when do you get the sense, or do you have your own acid test to determine when to walk away or deprioritize?
I can't say it's something specifically. I would say at this stage of my career, it's something that is just sort of a natural feeling that I get. When I do feel that way, I do ask some tough questions sometimes, like, can you please introduce me to X? I'd love to meet some other folks within your organization. So I think there's a time and a place, and for me it's more instinctual,
Yeah.
that you have to at that time start asking some tough questions to really understand where you are in the sales process. And tough questions aren't tough questions unless the you're not dancing the same dance with the prospect.
And have you ever like gone through the whole thing and it doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, there are times where it could be many reasons. It
Sure.
could be a change in leadership, um, delaying a potential opportunity. It could be I've been in positions where you're getting to the end of a sales cycle only to find out that a customer is going to be bought
Yeah.
or going to be sold. So yes, there are definitely times where you get to the end of the sales cycle, you have that deal forecasted to close, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's why it's important that these sales be team sales. So your leadership, your mentors, the people within your organization who you're forecasting the deal know exactly where you are in the deal.
And they're not emotionally attached as you are.
They're not as emotionally attached to the deal, but they are consistently asking when it's going to close, especially towards the end of a quarter.
Yeah.
And customers don't generally care all
Care.
that much
No, they
about end
don't.
of quarter. They're on their own time frame.
Yeah.
So, personally, I don't like those questions. Can we pull this? What do we have to do to pull this deal in before the end of the quarter? That is not, to me, a way
Supportive. Yeah.
of of what I would say is a lot of times is I put my prospect's hat on. I view the deal from their perspective. Their perspective isn't, we need to get this deal done by March 31st.
But I've always found talking through a deal with a colleague, they tend to see what the blatant thing that's missing because they're detached and they don't have a dog in the hunt.
It's interesting. Early in my career, I used to put together an org chart, and on the org chart, I used to list whether the person had influence or power or was a decision maker. And if they had influence or power, their level of influence or power. And then I would sit down with colleagues and we would actually have a conversation about each person. And sometimes in conversations, I was wrong in believing that somebody might have been a little bit more influential than I was. And that's why you're right. When there's somebody you can talk to who's not emotionally involved in the deal, that's a huge, huge help. And that's why these deals are team deals.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Paul, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
So Paul Lesser, you can find me on LinkedIn. I love talking sales. So if you ever just want to ping me, send me a LinkedIn email and have a sales conversation, I'd be happy to chat.